Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back with a review. I'm trying to keep the variation of videos that I do a bit of a mix. Today I have got the gorgeous Spirit Cats. You have probably noticed it sitting on this altar for a while now, and so it's finally coming to the front and we're gonna have a quick chat about it. One of the reasons that I was inspired to do this review at this particular time was one of my lovely tarot slinging buddies on here and me was sharing some love for this deck in the comments and really acknowledging its versatility, and so I thought that that would be something that I would discuss today. Spirit Cats, if you haven't seen it, you're probably getting an understanding of the aesthetic from the box already. But I feel that it would be incredibly easy to assume that this deck is a kind of soft, huggy altar deck, you know, something that's good for display and something that's going to give you a quick little cuddle and then be on its way. And there's nothing wrong with those decks. I have one of those decks. I'm not a great lover of having lots of them, but I certainly have one that I feel is like that. But for this deck in particular, it feels that it's just so much more versatile than that, at least for me. And so that is what I wanted to share within this review. Now, it is an indie deck for anyone who's wondering. I will put links in the description box below as to where Still stocks this. Let's go ahead and just get the kind of aesthetic, external bits and pieces out of the way. I know for some that feels like a superficial addition. I'm still quite passionate about how my cards come and how they're boxed, especially as someone who is quite tactile and likes the feel of certain decks in their hands. This deck is packaged beautifully. As you can see, you've got the information on the back, 48 cards, and the website. It does feel like it was created with the sort of overall experience in mind. As you can see, it comes in a two-piece. It's got the thumb holes, which is a lovely addition, but it slides off as well. And inside we've got close your eyes, soften your body, and draw a card. Listen to the magical whisperings of your intuition. So again, first glance, quite soft. As I say, there's nothing wrong with that, but this deck does feel like it's got a lot more to offer. Now the cards are square, as you can see, and they're kind of coaster sized. That's the best description that I can give you. I haven't got any other decks at the moment to compare them to, but they are coaster sized. And for someone with small hands, they're actually really comfortable to shuffle. I really enjoy them. It's definitely made me feel like other square decks could work for me. And in terms of the cardstock, it's just amazing. The whole experience of this deck is gorgeous. It's matte, but it's got a nice smooth coating so that they glide around on each other, but they're not slippery. It's nice and thick. So of course this deck does lend itself to being a wonderful art deck, and as I say, all of those other things, an altar deck, a hug deck, which is just my version of saying a deck that's quite soft and is not going to maybe shake your foundation, but actually this deck, at least I feel, comes at that sort of stance in much more of a balance. And so whilst it can do all those lovely soft things, it feels like it offers a bit more, at least in my experience. So what we have on the back is we've got these keywords, and then what you get is you get a very story-like introduction to the actual character. So the cat, they've all got names. You can see this one's called Luna, and a breakdown of what that energy represents. I did go through the deck and look at the keywords and sort of separate them whilst I was considering some of what I wanted to say about this deck, and chose a few of the keywords that show that I guess that there's balance Every single keyword can be intuited or experienced in any way you want. They feel like they're quite open mostly to interpretation. Obviously, if you read Catalyst, you're maybe not going to have fluffy bunny thoughts at the very beginning. But what each of these do is whether the word may lend itself more to something that's gentle and soft, or maybe whether it may lend itself more to a challenge or more of a shadow. They're still looking at how you can productively utilise or move through the energy dependent on what it is. Just a few of the keywords I wanted to show you as an example were catalyst, paradox, warrior, vulnerability, resilience, solitude, and then it starts moving into some of the others. We've got gratitude, curiosity, imagination, bliss, seeker, nature. And so you can see there's quite the array of words as well. Some of them feel more like a presence of mind or an emotional place, whereas others feel like more of an activity. Paradox, meet stardust. He is the convergence of opposites. He is the dark and the light. He is the magician that turns everything on its head, pouring at the paradox. He travels the galaxies with his best friends, free will and destiny. No one knows where one begins and the other ends. He sees the good in the evil and the evil in the good. Within every blessing there is a tragedy, and with every tragedy there is a blessing. We think we know what is what, but Stardust throws everything into question. Let paradox open up our thinking and our perspective. And so you can see, whilst it's not going into massive realms about what paradox means, it both supports you in the exploration of the message, I feel, but doesn't hinder you where you're left grappling with pages and pages of meaning and not allowing wherever that keyword or even the visual from the front of the card takes you. And so there's a lot of space for that intuition and growth and development from reading that. One of the things that people ask me is about how intuitive I feel that the cards are on the front. It's really your personal relationship with the artwork at the end of the day. I feel like paradox is a particularly obvious one in terms of paradox, at least for me, because we've got the light and the dark coloration, we've got the blend of the shadows coming through, and it really does lend itself to that keyword. You get a similar thing with Catalyst, My Little Luna, which when you see the moon and then you find out she's called Luna, it's like yes, and we've got the infinity symbol. So there's a lot to be read from these. Now, would I definitely guess the keyword from all of these just by looking at the fronts? No. But I don't feel like that's what they're meant to do. And so that's really where I wanted to explore some of the ways in which I've used these cards, because as I say, I've used these in so many ways and I feel like that makes them quite versatile. I'll flick through the pictures whilst I'm discussing further, and you can see that there's going to be a lot more colour than what you've already seen so far. They're these really, really vibrant watercolours, but it doesn't feel like they're too much. Sometimes the really colourful decks, they're a bit whoa for me, but this really kind of meets the middle. You can see it goes from pastel hues to some of the more fiery ones, and then you've got a few that have got a lot more white space. In terms of coloration, that's another thing that's really interesting to work with in this deck. If you work with colour relationships and connections, or if you work with chakras, that's another thing that can be really brought into this. You can also work with the artwork as opposed to the messages on the back, and what I mean by that is Maybe one day you don't feel like shuffling. Maybe you want to lay all of the cards out and pull one that you're drawn to, and then you can use that either purely based on your intuitive relationship and response to the card, or you can find out what that card's message is. This cat looks particularly peaceful, and there we go. So the keyword is bliss. And when you look at the artwork and then you flip over and you see the keyword, for me, it's always made sense. They feel like very gentle but uplifting colours, and as I say, Kitty just looks blissed out anyway. This kitty still looks okay. They've got a sort of centre about them, but there's a real vibrancy here. And so this one's passion, which makes sense. Look, they're called Ember. And I promise you, I haven't memorised these based on the pictures. I don't have that kind of brain. I use the deck a lot, but there's a few of the cards I have memorised purely because they come up a lot. But otherwise, yeah, I'm just reading the artwork. One of the things that I've done with these is, as I say, work with colour or pulled them visually based on what I'm drawn to. They are a really, really good supporting deck in other spreads, and because there's a lot of room for interpretation, allows you to use them with quite a few decks. At least in my experience, I've used this with 1 or 2 tarot decks and several more oracles. It's a nice additional energy. Now, as I said, because they kind of lend themselves to either a challenge or a question or a consideration in their messages, this is also a deck that I have journaled with. I have worked on intention setting using some of those productive sentences, or even where it then takes my mind and what comes of that. Goal setting. There really has been no limit for me. If I can think of something new to do with this deck, then I will. I don't know that there's much more that I can say about my experience of working with this deck, because hopefully I've given you a bit of an idea by now that it does just feel really versatile. It lends itself to the other decks due to that sort of beautiful yet non-intrusive nature. And it also is a good deck for working with others in terms of trying to get them to connect with their intuition, or how certain colours might leave them feeling. And that can be done in so many ways. It can be signposting emotion to colour, or it can get them to just connect with where they are in the here and now. That's before you even consider using the back information. That's the beauty of cards that don't have anything on the front other than the artwork. In that way, I guess, whilst it's very, very different in its feeling, I appreciate that. This deck can be used in many of the ways that I've used my Soul Cards deck, because there's no keywords, because you can just rely on the art. You've no need to take the person to the back message if you don't want to. If someone's maybe not so much that way inclined, or you're just trying to get them to engage with something creative and emotional and in the here and now, these cards are really, really good for that as well. And so this wonderfully vibrant, colourful, gentle but productive deck has been a really big part of my practice. Is one of the reasons that it sits on my altar. As you can see, there's a whole cat bit in my altar as well, but it sits there because I use it so frequently as well. I think that she got it down when she called it her inspirational card deck, because it does inspire me in a variety of ways, whereas I will, especially with tarot, tend more towards the psychological. I may tend more towards the creative with this. Now, of course, there's crossovers because I am both creative and very psychologically focused. But it's nice to have decks that bring certain aspects of you out in maybe a greater way. it has inspired a few pieces of artwork, doodles, using the colours to then inspire something that I'm colouring. As I say, there really isn't any limit for me, and I have really enjoyed working with this deck. So before I wrap that up and head on out, I'll pull one more card and we'll read the back of that just to give you a flavour of something different. Here's the front. I love that there's little flowers growing from their ears. And this card's freedom. Meet Lucy. She is awake even in her dreams. One of her favourite things to do is flying a lucid dream. It is the most natural, free and expansive feeling. You can go to outer space, imaginary lands, deep under the sea, to the top of Mount Everest, even through the earth itself, propelled simply by the power of your mind and your will. This little kitty is calling you to embrace that unbound freedom of flight and dreams. What is your wildest dream? Your craziest, most heart-expanding, joy-filled plan A. If you were completely free, what would you do? What a great question. What would we do? You hear these things asked occasionally, you know, what would you do if you didn't have all of your responsibilities? And then that can take you off either to a really just fun, inspirational place, or it may really be that point for you where you consider, actually, okay, why aren't I doing some of these things? How can I make those things a reality? And that's what I was talking about. I guess a lot of decks, you can take them wherever you want to go. But for me, this one did feel that it does lend itself to that. And that, as I say, it would be very easy for it to be seen as this fun, fluffy, marshmallow kind of thing that maybe couldn't do some of the other stuff. And it does both of the bits for me really well. It might not give me the biggest kick up the bum, but you know, there's more than what is first perceived on the surface. I'm going to leave it there, and if you've got any questions about something that I may not have said about the deck, then feel free to comment below, let me know what you think. If you've got the deck, I'd love to hear how you use it, if you enjoy using it, if it vibed with you, and I will catch you guys all again soon.